At the end of every month, you need to set aside an hour. And during that hour, you need to reflect on how the last 30 days have gone and plan what you're going to focus on for the next 30 days. In this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley, and I've been supporting postgraduate and doctoral students for the last 20 years. Now, in my opinion, one of the most helpful habits that you can get into is regular reflection. Unless you get real with yourself about how you've been spending your time and what you've been working on, you are not going to make the kind of progress that you want to make. When you don't have a monthly plan, it's much more likely that you're just going to drift and you're going to end up focusing on the things that just land in front of you, the things that other people put on your plate, the things that become urgent, and you will just get super busy doing all of that stuff. And in the process, all of your important dreams and goals and the big things that you're trying to achieve, they're just going to fall off your priority list. And that can become really disempowering because you'll end up getting frustrated and you think things like, oh, when was the last time I worked on my literature review? When was the last time I wrote a paper to present at a conference? When was the last time I did this, that, or the other? And you'll just feel that you are not moving forward. So monthly planning is absolutely essential if you want to start making real progress with your studies. In this video, I'm going to be covering the questions that you should be asking yourself at the end of every month to make sure that you are on track to achieve everything you want to achieve. If you want to get into this monthly planning habit, then you probably want to check out the Reflect and Plan Power Hour that I do on Zoom every month with my degree doctor community. The questions that I'm sharing with you in this video are actually from the workbook that we use in the monthly Zoom call. So if you get to the end of this video and you think, yeah, that was helpful, I would like to do that live. I would like to do that with other postgraduate students. I'd like to see what other people are putting in the chat. I'd like to know that it's not just me who's having these worries and these concerns and feeling like I'm not making progress or I am making progress or whatever. Then you should check out the link in the description because I put some details in there as to how you can get involved in our Reflect and Plan Power Hour. Okay, so let's get into it. These are the questions that you should be asking yourself at the end of every month. So firstly, how have you felt during the last 30 days? So we start off really broad. We think just generally, how have we been feeling over the last 30 days? How have things been going with our studies? What other things have been going on in our lives? What has the last month been like? How has it felt? Some people like to use words for this, so great, wonderful, accomplished, overwhelmed, productive, unproductive, that kind of thing. Other people will use like a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of 1 being really awful, 10 being really good. You know, what number has the last month been? Others will use things like percentages. So if you think of your kind of month as a battery, you know, what percentage were you operating at throughout the month? Were you on like 75% for most of it? Were you on 50% for most of it? So, you know, when you think about your potential, your capacity, what capacity were you operating at over the last month? So use whichever one of those feels the most comfortable for you. That might be a word, it might be a scale of 1 to 10, or it might be a battery percentage. Once we've done that, we're on to the second question. So what 3 things, big or small, have you achieved in the last month? So here we're focusing on your wins. What things have you accomplished over the last 30 days? And it doesn't have to be 3 huge, massive, big things. It might be 3 small things. It might be 1 big thing and 2 small things. So thinking about your studies, you might have understood a particular concept. You might have learned a specific theory. You might have started drafting a particular chapter of your dissertation. Maybe you had a really productive meeting with your supervisor, or you had some kind of breakthrough in terms of your analysis or your understanding of the literature. But also your successes and your wins, they don't have to be related to your studies. They can be related to other things as well. So personally, did you have a really nice time with a friend or a family member who you hadn't seen for a while? Have you developed some kind of personal health related goal? Have you done something nice for yourself? That kind of thing. The third question is, what challenges have you faced as you've been trying to make progress over the last month? So here we're thinking about your blocks, we're thinking about your barriers, we're thinking about things that have got in your way. Now, that might be systems or processes, it might be something at your college or university that's a real kind of bureaucratic sticking point or some kind of approval you need to get before you do something. But when we're thinking about challenges and when we're thinking about barriers, we also need to think about the ways in which we get in our own way, the ways in which we block ourselves. So really think about this, really take the time to reflect. Have you been the barrier to any of the things that you've been trying to achieve? And how have you been a barrier to yourself? What have you been doing? What have you been not doing? Question 4, what things have been working well for you this past month? Now, here it can be helpful to think back to your wins, to think back to your successes. So when you're reflecting on the things that you have achieved, the things that you have accomplished, how did you get to them? What made it possible to achieve those specific things? It might be a way of doing something. It might be a particular habit that you've always had that's been helpful for getting you to the point that you want to get to. It might be something that you've been doing that's quite new, that you've only just adopted recently. So this is, it's not just thinking about what you've actually achieved, it's thinking about how you've got there, so that we can kind of reverse engineer from that and figure out how we can use that going forward. So what's been working well for you in the last 30 days? Write that down. The 5th question is who or what has been helpful over the past month. So again, when we think back to those things that you've achieved, those successes, are there any common denominators there? Are there any particular people who are especially supportive, who really help you out when you're trying to achieve something? Specific things that they've done, bits of advice that they've given. And it might not be in-person people. It might be people on a podcast, people on a YouTube channel, people on a TikTok account. It might also be people in the form of a book. So you might have read a book around, you know, a growth mindset or a particular way of doing something. And the thing that the person has said in that book has really resonated with you and has been really helpful to you. So what we're trying to do here is get a sense of facilitators, not just in terms of process, but in terms of people, in terms of the supportive people, the helpful people, whether those people are 3D humans who are in your life, or whether they're people that you come across more remotely, so through a podcast, through a YouTube channel, or through a book. Now, question 6, what have you been spending your time on over the past month? Now, this is a question that many of us really don't want to answer. We're just tempted to skip over it, but please do stick with it, because the learning that you get from answering this question and reflecting is incredibly valuable in terms of planning how you're going to approach next month. So how have you been spending your time over the past 30 days? We need to look back at the activities that you've been doing over the last month, and we need to write them all down and figure out, are those things a useful use of our time, a helpful use of our time? Yes or no? And what are we going to do going forward? Are these things that we are going to keep doing and do them in the same way that we've been doing them over the last month? Are we going to keep doing them but do them slightly differently? Or are we going to just get rid of them because they are not a productive use of our time? Sometimes we can remember quite easily the things that we've been doing, so we can just write them down from memory. Other times we need to go back and we need to look through electronic calendars or diaries or journals, all that kind of thing, to remind ourselves of what we were doing on specific days at specific times. So we don't need to kind of account for our time hour by hour, but you just need to note down, say, 5 or 6 of the main activities that you've been working on over the last month, the big things that have taken up significant chunks of your time. Okay, so we're now moving on to our goals for next month. And question 7 is, how do you want to feel over the next 30 days? Now, this is very different from me asking you what do you want to do over the next 30 days, because when we focus on what we want to do, often we get a bit kind of lost sometimes and we forget why we're doing particular things. But if we do it the other way around, the way around that I'm suggesting, if we focus on how we want to feel to begin with, and then we identify activities that we can do to make us feel like that, that tends to work better. Now, we're going to get on to what we want to do in a moment, but for now, for this question, just focus on how you want to feel over the next 30 days. So, for example, do you want to feel energized? Do you want to feel calm? Do you want to feel peaceful? Do you want to feel accomplished? Now, and this is part of this question. I guess it's a kind of question 7b. It's, what are the things that you need to do more of to feel that way over the next 30 days? And what are the things you need to do less of to feel that way? So we've identified how we want to feel. Now we need to identify what things are going to kind of turn the dial towards that feeling. What do we need to stop doing and what do we need to start doing? Let's actually use one of my examples. Now, recently I wanted to start feeling more energized. That was my thing. That was my thing that I wanted to feel over the next 30 days was more energized. Now, in order to feel more energized, I needed to do more of particular things and less of particular things. So in terms of the things I needed to do less of, get my words out properly, I needed to stop staying up really late watching Netflix. I needed to stop drinking so much coffee. I needed to start getting up earlier. I needed to start drinking more water. I needed to start doing exercise more regularly. So you can identify the things you need to stop, the things you need to start, and that was my example. So think about the word that you identified in terms of how you want to feel over the next 30 days. What can you do to make that more likely? What can you do to bring that about? What do you need to do more of? What do you need to do less of? Question 8, what is your word of the month for next month? Pick a word that's going to be your word of the month. This word is going to be your theme for the next 30 days. So this is probably going to be linked to your answer for the last question in terms of how you want to feel over the next 30 days. You need to kind of embody that and encapsulate it in a particular word. Maybe your word of the month next month is calm. Perhaps you've been through a bit of a busy period, a bit of a hectic period, and you just want to set the tone for something that is a little bit more peaceful. And that could be a word as well. So it could be calm, it could be peaceful. Whatever you want to feel next month, link it to this word of the month that you're developing. So just to draw on my example again, when I was talking about wanting to feel energized, a really good word of the month for that would be vibrant, for example. In terms of how you use your word of the month, you might want to get a bit creative with it. You might want to make a screensaver for your phone so that you've got it in front of you. You can see this word every day. You might want to set reminders for little alarms to go off on your phone to remind you of this word. You might want to put it on a post-it note. Just do whatever you want to do with it in order to just get this word in front of you every day and just remind yourself of it. Remind yourself of that theme for the month, of that tone that you are setting for the next 30 days. Question 9, what are your big goals for next month? Now, I would advise keeping it to a minimum to begin with. So perhaps no more than 1 or 2 specific goals for next month. Now, when we're talking about goals, we're talking about our dreams, the things that we want to achieve, the things that we're working towards. We're not talking about the stuff that we do on the regular anyway, because all of that stuff just kind of bubbles along, doesn't it? And we don't want that to be the things that we're trying to achieve because we're kind of achieving those things anyway. Here, we're thinking about the bigger picture. We're thinking about our dreams, our aspirations. So what things could we be working on next month that will get us closer to those? So pick 1 or 2 things to begin with and write them down. And just to give you a quick example, say there's a theory that you really don't understand that is kind of frustrating you, but it's something that you need to get your head around in order to make some progress on your research or on an assignment or whatever. You could make that your goal for the next month. You could say, for example, my goal for the next month is to develop a really good understanding of grounded theory. That's it. That is going to be the thing that you would focus on for that next month. And when you have fewer goals like that, if you just had that as your goal, then you are going to be incredibly focused in terms of actually making that happen. And that brings us nicely on to question 10. What do you need to be doing on a weekly basis to achieve that goal? So here, you need to break that goal down into steps, into things that are manageable, things that you can actually accomplish within that time period of a week. So in terms of how you would break that goal down, you might break it down into 4 particular stages like this. So week 1, you're going to find some literature, you're going to do some research online, you're going to talk to your professors and find out what you actually need to read. In the second week, you could read that material, you could make some notes on it. In the third week, you can make an appointment with your professor, with your supervisor to sit down and discuss some of the things that you found and make sure that your understanding of it is correct. Then in the fourth week, what you might want to be doing is writing up those notes and creating some kind of guide for yourself, a nice little PDF to summarise everything that you know about grounded theory. And when you've broken it down week by week like that, what you need to do is then put those tasks into particular days. So you might say, okay, so on Friday afternoon this week, I'm going to spend 2 hours doing some research online, looking at books on grounded theory or looking at journal articles on grounded theory. And then for your other things that you want to be accomplishing. You should be identifying time slots in week 2 and week 3 and week 4. So get in touch with your professor, get that appointment in the calendar, set aside some time to write up your notes. Just actually get those things into time slots. And this can be a really, really effective way of actually making progress on our goals. Is we identify what the goal is, we break that down into steps, into stages, we allocate that to weeks, and then we allocate that to days. And it sounds like quite a lot in the beginning. It sounds like, oh, that's quite a lot to work through, that's quite a lot to sort out and organise. But actually, once you get into it, it does become much easier. And the more of these monthly planning sessions you do with yourself, the better you get at figuring out what you can actually accomplish within given time periods. Sometimes you'll overshoot it and you'll plan to do way too much stuff, but you'll learn from that. And the month after, you'll cut it down and you'll be more realistic. So the more you do this, the better you get at it. And the better you get at it, the more progress you make. And I think it's really important to just say something about that in terms of when we don't reach our goals, when we don't get the things done that we plan to do. It's just a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity to do things differently next month, to perhaps not try and cram so much in next month. And even when you get to, say, the end of your first month or your second month of doing this and you've not done the things that you wanted to do, you have actually made progress because you have got into the habit of regularly reflecting and planning. And you are going to make more progress in the long term as a result of actually developing this habit than if you'd never developed it in the first place. So don't lose sight of that. It can be quite disheartening sometimes when you set these goals and you don't achieve them. But one thing that you really need to be aware of is, well, you're setting goals, you're working towards them, and that wasn't something you were doing before. So that is progress. So that's it. There you have a series of questions that you can ask yourself every month to make sure that you're making progress and you're planning and you're reflecting. So if you found that helpful, if you found that useful, if you would like to do that live every month with our Degree Doctor community, check out the link in the description where I've put lots of information about our Reflect and Plan Power Hour and how you can get involved in that. So that's it for today. We are done. I will be back very soon with another video on how to supercharge your studies.